Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Be More podcast. I'm Brittany.
I'm Maria, and today we have a guest again. His name is Dan. We actually all went to high school together.
Yes, we did.
Hi, Dan. Welcome. How have you
Hi,
been? All
I've
right.
been good. We just actually moved down to North Carolina.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Brittany told me before we started recording that you're down there.
Yes, it's not much warmer down here though. For some reason, it's only like a few degrees warmer. We brought the cold with us.
Oh, really? That's
So,
annoying.
what part of North Carolina are you in right now?
So we're like 3.5 hours inland, just south of Charlotte.
Oh, wow. Okay, you guys are far. Okay.
Yeah,
Dan and I were going to move to North Carolina after I graduated college.
Raleigh, right?
Yep, we were going to move to like the Raleigh Durham area. So, I'm like weirdly familiar with it. We still really like it down there, but one day maybe.
I
One
know
day
that.
maybe it'll happen.
Hmm.
But it's so
Yeah,
like, oh, it's so nice down there. It really is.
yeah. We wanted to move out this way because Michelle's family, actually, my wife,
Mm-hmm.
actually, her family moved down here a few years ago, and this the cost of living, the nature,
Mm-hmm.
everything like that. I mean, we're like a half hour away from the South Carolina border.
Wow.
And we're only a couple hours from the mountains. So
Mm.
we get to go hiking and all that stuff. And the city's about 40 minutes away. So we get to go to like downtown Charlotte and that whole nine.
Yeah, you get a little bit of everything. That's what I liked about it so much. But that's awesome. What are you doing down there?
So I started a job at a place called Barker Brothers. They're like a full property maintenance company. Started probably right at the end of September because we moved down here in August. And Michelle just passed her surgical tech certification because she used to do it, but she had to renew it. And she's waiting to hear back from an eye doctor to do cataract surgery
Wow.
Oh,
and
wow.
stuff like that. Yeah, so and then we're both going back to school in the spring semester, either at UNC or at a community college down here.
Oh, that's awesome. Are you guys gonna do the same thing for your degree? Are you planning on doing something different?
No, she's staying in surgical tech, and I'm going to be a mental health counselor.
Love
Oh, good
that's
for
the
you.
yep.
Yeah,
That
Nice.
sounds right.
yeah. So we both want to end up working at the VA because the VA centers down here are really, really good. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot more of them, and we've been able to link up with a lot of vets. I was actually only stationed on the other side of the state, so
Yeah,
Gotcha,
um,
gotcha.
that's
So,
awesome.
yes.
So for people who
Mm-hmm.
don't really know, well, like most of our listeners, and like Maria doesn't know what happened to you after high school, really. So this is like info for Maria too. Tell everyone more about like what happened to you after high school, like and what your journey, because you've had a very interesting journey.
yes. Okay, where to start? So I graduated high school in 2010, and then tried for my parents more so or less tried to go to school for about a half a semester,
Mm-hmm.
and me and my our friend actually decided to go to the same recruiter, and we both joined the army, and I ended up going 2011 August. I left for basic training. I joined to be a Cav Scout, the cavalry more or less, and
Mm-hmm.
basically did reconnaissance. We went kind of behind the whole enemy line thing, found, you know, the enemy, I guess, per se, um, was trained up in all of that. And it was about 16 weeks down in Georgia. And then I came home for Christmas. And then I went back and I went to airborne school. So I got to learn how to jump out of planes for a few
Oh,
weeks.
wow.
Yeah. And then they told us, like, oh, you won't deploy for another year or so after you get done. And so I graduated at the end of January, and by the end of February, I was already deploying. Um, yeah, so it was very, very quick. Um, Ended up deploying in February 2012 to southern Afghanistan on a
Oh,
combat
wow.
tour. So yeah, it was a big rush. It basically got basic training and all that stuff, and a deployment in within a year of my military career. We came back after a very intense deployment, to say the least. We can always get into more detail about that. Um, And after meeting these guys for like a week and a half, we had deployed, and I hardly knew anyone, and I was one of like two or three new guys, and they had all worked with each other for a couple of years at that point. So we were really just thrown right into it. It was like a 16-hour flight over there. We had to land in Kyrgyzstan, which is just below Russia, and we flew into country, and it was an extreme difference right away. Um, it's very, it's kind of weird. We landed in a sandstorm, so it was just right off the bat, it was so much different. And within like a couple of weeks, it was 130 degrees outside, and it's all desert, and then it was a very, very rough environment. And usually when you get into country, you wait like a couple months until you get oriented with the area to go on patrols and do missions and stuff. 3 weeks in, we were already going. My units were very highly revered with the 82nd Airborne Division, so we got put right into the mix. We usually have more money for training, for whatever reason. We're kind of the president's first call if anything were to go on in the world. We'd get flown in. Within 24 hours, we could be anywhere in the world, ready to be deployed for like 3 to 6 months. And so it was very intense, and we were training foreign forces over there, the Afghan army, Afghan police and stuff like that. And we went out on patrols all the time. I think we were only on base 3 days at a time, and we'd be gone for a week, going in at like helicopters at night, and kind of just, getting into our own mess of things, I guess is the nicer way of putting it. Got to meet a lot of the locals. Very interesting people. You have to kind of be rough to live out there. You gotta be willing to survive big time. Yeah, so we ended up being there until or the beginning of September. So just about 9 months we were there. And then when we got back, we went from like 130 to 150 degrees to 80 degrees in North Carolina. And it was very strange because you get used to like a dry heat over there. There's nothing humid about it. Like, unless you get close to a river, there's nothing humid about it. And we were drenched in sweat. The humidity here like was completely different than the dry heat. So that was really interesting, for sure. And we got to go home on my 21st birthday. Was my first day of leave. So that was really, really cool. Actually, a law student on the train home bought me my first beer. So that was really cool. And then I came home for a few weeks. That's actually where I reconnected with my wife, now wife. She lived in the same neighborhood, was friends with my little sister. We had met back up, and just started talking again. And then by just around Christmas, actually February timeframe, we started dating. And 8 years later, we're still together. And I had stayed in the Army until 2015. So it was 2013 when we started dating. I still had another 2 years in. Got like 30 or 40 jumps under my belt. I got to jump out of planes, helicopters, you name it. So, and I'm terrified of heights, absolutely terrified. And I just went for it. My first time in a plane right after high school, I went skydiving. So it was like on Friday the 13th of all days. So just add it all up, and got most accident prone in high school. So kind of let's just throw it all in there. And yeah, so I did that and got to train, almost deployed again. I was gonna re-enlist, but it just kind of got to it was a lot. 9 hours from home, everything you've ever known, everyone you've ever known. And the big thing that like I think I try to relate to with a lot of people is that when you meet all these guys and you become friends with them, kind of like how you're in high school, you see these people every single day. You hang out with them a lot of the time, especially in a small town like where we're from, and you see these people all day, every day. They come home with you for Thanksgiving, Christmas. Some guys can't afford to go all the way on the other side of the country. Um, I had friends from Hawaii, Washington State, California, all these places that couldn't go home, so they would come up to New Jersey. I think Brittany has met some of these. So very energetic bunch is a nice way.
That's such a good word.
Yeah. So but after meeting these guys and being so close with them, working with them, hanging out with them, spending holidays together, being in these really stressful conditions and all this stuff, every year to 6 months or even less sometimes, you're having a friend that's either getting out of the military, getting stationed somewhere else, you name it, they're leaving. And the majority of people that I serve with, I haven't seen in over 6 years, 5, 6 years, some more. So, it's like when you graduate and you don't see any of the people that you were friends with in high school ever again, so it's like, oh, most of the guys that I deployed with the only time, which is another sad thing because we've had friends pass away, since we've been back, quite a few, because veteran suicide's kind of a big thing over the last 20 years plus. I mean, you can go back as far as Vietnam if you really wanted to, but it's we lost about 11 guys since 2012, including deployment, 11 or 12. It might even be more. It just racks up very quickly, unfortunately. And that's the only time I've seen guys that I deployed with was at the funerals that we could afford to go to. I know I had to go out to Detroit, back to North Carolina, and so on and so forth. And so it was just a lot. And this year, though, I was able to see two of them that I haven't seen in 5 years. We've had a group chat going since 2015, 2014 time frame, and I got to see two of them. One of them was in New Jersey because I had lived in North Carolina for a little while after I got stationed there. We moved out to Charlotte, actually, where we are right now. Right after I got out, went to school for a little bit, and then went back up to New Jersey to be with the fam, so on and so forth. And I got to see two of my buddies. One of them was shadowing the president. He's an EOD. He was basically checking the cars for bombs and stuff like that. He had his bomb dog and all that. So I got to see him for a couple days, which was amazing. The most innocent guy in the world, and here he is 3 deployments later, just this hard individual. I don't know if you ever met Jeff Pregmore.
Yeah, I see his face. He always had a baby face, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, now he has this dad bod, like hard face. Like it's a 180. It's kind of like it's amazing. But and then actually, so we had a friend that he wanted to marry us, but he was like an atheist and stuff like that. And we're not religious by any means, but we had a military ball. You know, he was drunk and all that stuff. He's like, I'm gonna marry you guys one day. He mistaked our name tags for Mr. and Mrs. Estrada, and we had only been dating like a little bit over a year, and I was like, thanks, man. So he actually drove from Tennessee the week of the wedding and married us 5 years later after saying that, 5, 6 years later.
That's so nice.
So yeah, so he got officiated, and we kept making sure, like, you're sure. You're absolutely sure that you're allowed to marry us, whole nine. We're not going to find out like a couple months from now, whatever. And so I got to see him, and yeah, it was we can get into the mental health aspect later if you want to, because that was a 2 or 3 year journey. Because that was an extremely difficult time, and I could probably talk for multiple podcasts about it. So we just ended up back this way. Just a way better environment. New Jersey's a little crazy for us. It's really expensive. You guys know.
We're
It's
nodding for people who
Yeah.
are watching this video later. Maria and I are both nodding. We're aware of the crazy, that's for sure.
Yes. It's a very rough environment. You kind of have to have thick skin to live up there. And it kind of it just wears on you. And then when it comes to, so I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and PTSD back in 2016, 2017. And I had been diagnosed with PTSD when I was in the army, and really everyone else had it. So it was like kind of a normal thing to be this way when you're in the combat world. It's right. It's as normal as we can say it is, to feel that way in a group of people. It's kind of just becomes the norm. So you don't really realize your symptoms until you're separated from the whole thing, and away from all the people that you're used to being able to be close with and talk to about all this stuff and feel normalized. And yeah, it was its own ride. And being up in New Jersey, there's a lot of triggers, to say the least. You kind of have to be on guard all the time when you're out and about, and you don't know when someone's gonna flip you off, kind of thing. Like down here, the biggest thing that I had to get used to, and it still happens, is people wave at you when you ride into the neighborhood, and I'm like, all right, he's not telling me to go screw myself, or he's not flipping me off, or he's not,
Yeah, that's so different from New Jersey. I would be like,
it's
why are you waving at me, bro? Like I would
yeah,
be like, don't look at me.
and it's
Oh, no,
people that
it's
I've
different.
never met, and
Yeah.
like I'm out and about all day at work, and people are just like, hey, and I'm like, hey, like I don't know you, and then they'll start conversations with you, all like asking you how you are, and I'm like, I'm good, I
You're
guess.
like
I didn't
I'm from New Jersey. I don't do this.
right, and we still have New Jersey plates on our car, so
Ah.
it's like
I know that
people
there
are
are a lot
just
of people from when we had gone down to visit, and I don't know if it's throughout the state, but everybody that we met was either from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or New York.
yeah.
Mm.
So
Like,
our neighbors across the street, Pennsylvania, we have one right next door from Northern Virginia. I've met one of the guys I work with is from Connecticut. Two people are from New Jersey. Another one's from New York. I mean, our street coming off of like one of the streets in our neighborhood is Verrazano. I mean, it's like the Verrazano Bridge in New York. Like, it's amazing. And like and crazy part is my favorite pizza place and favorite bagel shop down here are owned by people from New York and from New Jersey.
there you go.
That
That was what we
makes
got
sense.
the inside scoop on when we were down there. Is once they started saying people were from Jersey and New York, that's what we started to find out about. But that's I feel like so many people who have the same feelings that you had about Jersey, like all the people that are nice from the tri-state area, were like, this place isn't very nice. Let's all go huddle somewhere else.
Yeah. That and just the cost of living. I mean, Michelle's parents pay like quarter of what my parents do, or a third of it. It's like the money you just save and the cost of living, just things in
Mhm.
general.
Yeah.
Gas. I mean, even in that sense, it's like it's amazing how much cheaper it is down here. Like we went from worrying about, sharing an apartment with some friends like we were, just being able to like kind of have our own thing, to we can get a house in a year from now. Like, and that's just the reality of it. And I'm getting even paid like way more for doing the same exact job I was doing up there. I got a raise under 90 days. Like just different, totally, totally different, unexpected. So it's just a different, totally, totally different environment, and that was my biggest thing when it came to mental health, was my environment. Because you can, work on yourself as much as possible, but blocking out how crazy, really how competitive it is up there to just kind of be heard or get ahead or advance. There's so many people and so many people that are hungry for whatever it is that some people tend to do whatever it is to get ahead, and it's not always the nice way of doing it.
Maria, go back to your three things.
Oh yeah. So Dan, I don't know if you know, but I feel like every episode now, ever since I started saying it, like this has been the reason why the world sucks is basically my whole like three things. It's capitalism, religion, and politics. I feel like this in this instance it's capitalism
Yeah,
is what the issue is here in the tri-state area, because you pretty much described it, like how competitive it is up here and how triggering it can be because everyone's
Yeah,
trying to get ahead and do like the wrong things
yeah.
basically most of the time.
Yeah.
yeah,
They're definitely
absolutely.
corporate driven. We are a corporate driven state because we're so close to major cities. And that's exactly why, like my fiance Dan, not to confuse everybody, but my fiance Dan has been like working like really hard. He's been in like 5 years of being in the corporate life, and he's built like started to climb his way up the ladder. And he's like, this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life, because it does. It starts to crush you. It starts to crush your soul. Like
Yeah,
he was starting to see it, and he was starting to feel it, and he was starting to deal with like all of the mental consequences of it. And that was why, I mean, it takes a lot of knowing yourself to know. And like it's kind of hard because we're kind of told that that's what we should want for ourselves. I
right.
mean, if you
For
don't
sure.
have the awareness to say like, or you don't know the any better, right? Like when you're told one thing and then you have to kind of just think that it's the best thing for you, it takes some time to really realize, well, this is not good.
Yeah. And it's even harder because I don't know if your parents had lived in New Jersey before that, or if you had grandparents that lived there too. So my family's been in New Jersey since they came to this country. We had the same house since like 1915. So we've lived in New Jersey our whole lineage of being here, when we came to this country. And it it's the same mentality. My grandfather was 8 years old during the Great Depression. Working hard and having that mentality from that generation, working hard, saying you're going to get ahead, and then put yourself into one of the most competitive areas in the country. It doesn't work that way.
Right? That was the reality. There was no other option for them.
No other option. They were kind of on the cusp of you can still go to college for an affordable price and not be in debt for 20, 30 years. And they kind of, it's really strange because trying to relate to those kind of generations, even my parents' generations, I mean, they're in their late 50s, 60s, and it's totally different, um, idea of what it is. Like that anxiety of not being able to make it because I'm not working hundreds of hours in a week. I don't have a degree or I'm not where I want to be in life. It gets more and more compressed because it's like, well, these people made it by the time they were 30. They had the job they wanted. They had this, that, whatever it was. And, it was like seeing that in other people and seeing that in, I guess, that aspect in that generation, it was very difficult. And it was a little strange because even at that, like my family has served in the military since we've been in every war since World War II. So I've seen that side, and it's very different. Like it's not like we ever had any money. That kind of it's not why you kind of served, I guess, in a sense. But my reality of that is I get paid to go to school. They took money out while I was in, paid for me to be able to go to school. And I get like a housing allowance while I'm going. So like if I didn't want to work, essentially, I didn't have to. But it took 4 years of being in what I was describing to you guys as a means to do it. So like that in itself is just very different. That's why I have 4 other siblings. So like it's not like my parents could have afforded to without going broke to send me to college, which I wasn't going to do, especially when I realized I didn't want to be in school at first. Especially, that's the one reason that I went. Well, one of the reasons I went into the army is because like all my other siblings were still around. They were still kind of financially struggling and stuff like that. And I was just like, I'm not going to put this on anyone. I'm going to kind of go hold it down on my own. And a lot of people make that decision when you don't have other opportunities. I know that was the same with a lot of my family. They didn't have the opportunities. You know, war was going on. It's kind of just take you away from home, kind of take you out of that environment.
Yeah.
So,
There were so many. I remember fighting with you when you originally. So Dan and I, we went through like, well, for me, it was one of the first, like, LFD was one of the first, like, major things that ever happened in my life.
ugh,
Can I interrupt? I want to interrupt, and it's a good interruption. So LFD, my Dan, my little sister, my youngest sister is junior now. She wants to head up LFD now because it's turned into a wrong direction apparently, where it's like not as diverse as they would like it to be.
Well,
Like the lead for diversity, right? LFD.
yeah.
It's not really diverse, and they don't really do anything towards diversity. And my sister's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna fucking do it." I was like, "Good for you." So this is very good. Sorry, I just wanted to
that's
let you guys
awesome.
know an update on the club.
She should Zoom with us. Okay, so how do I start this? Well, I got to go backwards to go forwards.
Sorry, it was a good interruption though.
So we all went to a very, very small high school, and Dan is a year ahead of Maria and I. But we never had any other, like, we never took classes together. We didn't, like, we, like, never would have crossed paths if it wasn't for LFD, in all reality. And this program had really, honestly, it was like a national program that had started, and you probably know more history about it than I do, Dan, but we had been selected with a couple of other people from our grades to go to this sleepaway camp. I also don't remember, where is it? Is it in New York?
it's in Pennsylvania.
I couldn't even remember where. So we all got on this bus. Oh my goodness. And we're told that we were going for, I think we were literally only there for a weekend. It was only 48 hours, I feel like, even though it felt like.
I want to know who was on this trip.
Oh,
The two of us, Sadie,
Oh, okay.
Rachel.
Okay.
Was it
Okay.
only the four of us? Oh, and Brooke. Okay, there we go.
Oh, Brooke.
And
Okay.
we were all put on this bus, and I'll never forget, they took our phones like the second we got. This was like back in the day too, so like we didn't have good phones, and we probably didn't have any cell reception either. But
that was my first cell phone.
yeah, mine too. And we were like all devastated, and it was just, and I'll never forget when I closed my eyes, I still see the image of looking out the window at all of the adults who were like yelling and singing and cheering when we showed up.
Yeah, all excited.
I still see that
No.
in my eyes when I close my eyes. But we spent like 48 to 72 hours. I think it was 3 or 4 days. It was like a weekend in this camp. That was when I learned what a yurt was. And with people.
Did you say a yurt?
Yeah, a yurt. I had no idea
Same.
what it was.
Same.
And with all these kids who went through the exact same experience we did, they were all told like, "Hey, you get to go on this trip." And they were all like super excited, and then got thrown on a bus with a bunch of strangers that had no idea what was happening. It was the most eye-opening and enlightening and full of like just basic human love experience that was like the very first time I ever experienced anything like that. I can't even like super speak to like what we did while we were there, because I feel like so much stuff happened that we weren't even like mentally capable of realizing what was happening as we were going through it. But like just true, honest, like humanity, and like crying and realizing things and talking about all the stuffs. Like Maria, we talk about all on this podcast all the time. We talk about all the stuff that you're told not to talk about in a public setting. That was what that weekend was.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That must have been so enlightening for high school kids, honestly.
Yeah, it was amazing. And because of that, all of us who went together like came back with a bond that like no one else was going to be able to. It's very much what, like, it's that situational connection that you had kind of brought up, Dan, that like you really experienced in a really like intense situation with being in the Army. But it's true, like the people you're around who experience the things that you experience, you connect with them because of that. And
right.
that was like what started our friendship. And like Dan was like, and I feel like from what I remember, and maybe you feel a different way, I feel like we became each other's person that we could talk to about things that we didn't really talk to a lot of other people about. And like Maria, you were always like that with me too. Like so like whatever I didn't tell you, I probably told Dan. So like
fair.
that was
Okay.
the friendship that we were able to start because of it. And with that being said, the person that I was, when he wanted to go into the army, I lost my mind.
Okay. I can see that, Brittany. I can see that with the person that you were before.
But from the whole point of me bringing all this up is the only thing that shut me up was me remembering you saying, like, I want to do this for, it wasn't like this invincibility cause. It wasn't like this heroic cause. It was like, I'm doing this to protect the people that I love. Like, that was, like, I can still hear you saying that in my head. And I always was just like, being the person that he is, like, he has a humongous heart. So being the person that he is, I was like, well, I'm not going to stop it. Like, I'm not going to be able to stop him. So I'm just going to stop fighting with him about it and try to be as supportive as possible. But I'll never forget him saying that. And that so much leads to what, so I want you to talk about what you're doing now with, like, Good Morning Feels and, like, leading into what you're still doing. Because I know you want to, impact is, like, your thing. Like, you are here because I know that you want to make an impact. And I know that, like, the, like, cause for doing things for veterans is super important to you, but just, like, helping the all of humanity who deal with anything mentally. So tell us about Good Morning Feels and all of the stuff that you're doing outside of, like, working.
So to kind of touch back on the LFD and everything like that, that experience was probably one of the most intense experiences and eye-opening things I've ever experienced, even still to this day. And we were, that was, oh my God, I'm gonna
I think I
hate
was
myself.
14. No, that
Like
sounds too young. 15? 16? I don't know.
16, something
16,
like that. Yeah, because it was like 12 years ago.
Oh, God.
Oh, guys.
I think I was a sophomore and you were a junior.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So then 16, 15, 16, 17, whatever that range. So young.
Ugh,
12 years ago. You really had to say that, Dan, didn't you?
I know. Ugh. Anyway, that experience actually kind of prompted me to be very open when I was in the army. Meeting all these people from all these different backgrounds and from all different countries, because we trained international forces from Mexico, from Germany, all these different forces. When they would come to our base, we would train them. So there was always this culture gap, and I noticed that there was people from other states that really they weren't used to being around other cultures, and being from the tri-state area in itself too kind of opens you up to that. There's a lot. I mean, I've never met the same kind of person up in that area. Like, it's you're kind of your own thing, and that kind of prepared me for the military and stuff like that when it came to all these different cultures, because I had really never left anything south of Virginia and nothing north of New York at that time. And I met people from every single state. There's not a state that I don't know someone from. And that's actually why, what kind of rolls into why I like the veteran community and working with the veteran community, because it's people from so many different backgrounds. But, outside of being a human with emotions and all these things, there's this unique experience that we all share collectively and that we're able to hone in on from all these different backgrounds. You know, like my roommate was from Jamaica and he serves in the army to get his citizenship.
Wow.
So, that in itself was like an amazing experience. And, like that's why I like working with the vet community, because we can not only are those gaps like that get lost in translation from culture to culture, trying to like have an underlying unity when culture kind of take over someone's, I guess, whole identity. It's kind of stripped away, and you're able to still hold on to that stuff, but be in a position to where it's like, well, I know this person, I can relate this to them, they're gonna hear me out, and I'm not gonna have this, I guess, shield up of something that they're not gonna understand, and that I'm gonna be so proud of that I already am going into it that they don't understand it.
Experience together that above all else, nothing else matters. Like such a foundational experience that because of the levels of like it's traumatic. Like that's a word that just should be, we don't associate those two things enough, I feel like. But because of the level of trauma you experience, like that holds the highest point to any possible differences you could have and
Right.
set you apart.
Right. And even in that too, like how we were talking about earlier with age difference and how we kind of see things that way. There's this underlying understanding between generations of veterans that we all understand. So being able to connect with people that are older and even people that are going into the military now. I mean, what is a 45-year-old that served, back in his when he was 18 relate to someone who's 18 now? Well, there is those traditions that get carried through. There are those things that, well, the military can really suck, so it's like the embrace the suck mentality. Kind of just what I carry through life is embrace the suck. And it's, something that I've been able to connect with people that were served in Vietnam, people that are going into, the military now. Something that really helped me when I moved here, Michelle's mom, my wife's mom, she cuts hair. She's, professional stylist, has her own salon, does her own thing. She cuts this Vietnam vet's hair and his wife's. And, like he was really into bad stuff. He got Agent Orange. He just survived prostate cancer because of it, and all this stuff. And I met him, one of the nicest people I still have met to this day. And he actually took me to the VA himself and brought me in, walked me around the hospital, all that stuff, showed me where everything was, gave me phone numbers, lists of people that he's talked to, um, all this different information. And he served in Vietnam, you know, back in like the early 70s, late 60s, and I was able to have full conversations with him, still meet up with him now, and we're so far in age, but we're still able to connect, and kind of work together on things and get all this information and kind of work all together in that aspect. So what I do, getting to Good Morning Feels now, one of the things that I even told him about was that, so one of the hardest times of the day for me mentally is in the morning, as it is with a lot of other people. Something, yeah,
My hand.
like coffee, let's go kind of thing. Trying to wake up, and but really, outside of that, like sometimes I just don't sleep. It can be up for a really long time.
Maria.
Yeah.
Me too. Can I just also confess one thing? I did not sleep last night. I actually fell asleep. It's not even night at 8 a.m.
Wow.
So I can relate to that, Dan.
Yes. So, and like, yeah, I've definitely had those nights. Definitely. And I wake up at 5:30 for work, in the morning. So like, sometimes I won't fall asleep till 2:30, and then I have a 12-hour day ahead of me. And then I still have to eat dinner when I get home, and take like an hour for myself or something like that.
And like be a person still outside of being like a workhorse.
Right. And when you're in a relationship too, you have to put time into that to spend with someone. And you don't want to be falling asleep in every movie that we're watching, and like whatever it is. So you still have to put a lot of effort into the rest of your day, and it can turn really quickly into a 16, 18-hour day, and then do it again 4 or 5, 6 days in a row. But something that happens with like PTSD and stuff like that, and even bipolar disorder, you get like racing thoughts, suicidal ideations, meaning like you don't want to harm yourself, but you're still having these feelings of not wanting to be here.
And I talked about those not too long ago because I definitely get them also.
Yeah, I get them. I have seasonal depression around this time of year. And that's how, and this is why, like 8 a.m., like I go to sleep, whatever. Um, I don't want
all
to say it's
fun
similar,
ones.
but it's very similar symptoms, I guess. But suicidal ideation is a constant thing. Yeah, I think I've told Brittany about like an article that I read like years ago or a couple years ago that explained it really well because I could never pinpoint what that thought is. You know, like it kind of just comes and like sometimes I'm like, you know, I'm driving. I'm like, you know, I could just swerve right now. Like, you know, it's just, but I won't because like I like love life enough, but like also
Right. Well, that's the
the
thing.
thought
I
is
think Dan
there.
said it in a really good way, right?
Yeah.
It's the idea of having the peace of not having to deal with anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Right.
it's that sense of like if I do this, then I don't have to worry. Like I won't be here, and it'll all
Yeah.
be over. You know,
Right.
like it's different than the actually thinking about the process of doing it. It's more of like the consequence or like the product of the action that is what is like idealized.
Idealized. Yeah.
Right. So like, and it's really so waking up sometimes when you're exhausted is already just in itself is being exhausted is exhausting. You know, all the time. And like sometimes I'll just have terrible dreams. Sometimes it's not even things that have happened. It's just stuff that situations my mind creates to make me more like
Which is
into a panic.
probably worse than reality sometimes, which is not
Right.
fun.
Right. Catastrophizing,
Yeah.
you know, a situation and stuff like that. So like sometimes I'll wake up at 5:30 in the morning with suicidal ideations. I didn't sleep well. I know the day is going to be stressful, so I'm already, you know, going into it with that kind of mindset. And like that is the hardest time of the morning for me. Sometimes, like in the past, like before I was able to go and get help and go to therapy and be on medication and stuff like that, I would literally not go to work. I wouldn't go to school. I would be lucky if I showered that day. You know, when before I had gotten help and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Like leave bed was an accomplishment in itself, or eat something. And you know, so I started this page because every morning I try to do an affirmation for myself, like kind of set a tone for the day. Like usually I'll scroll through all these quotes that I've saved. I'm just like, what's sticking out to me today? What's really, you know, being mindful of things that have been going on in my life that could be triggering me to feel this way or feel worse or to go into this spiral, and kind of try to set that tone for the day. You know, something that I can look at and physically look at my actual page, you know, Good Morning Feels, and just be like, this is how I said I wanted to be today. Did I reach that? You know, is that where my mindset's at? Because it's something to focus in on when your mind's in a million different places and you're in your day. You could take a second to read what you wrote and to kind of practice what you preach, live those words. And I've been writing a lot more of my own stuff, even in my notes. If I don't post something, I have things in my notes that kind of I'll look back on, you know, and just have something there to hone in on for the morning. And I share that with people. I try to be very real and upfront about that kind of stuff because it's, you know, I'm not just talking to my veteran friends. You know, just because I'm a vet doesn't, and just because I had these very difficult experiences doesn't mean that other people can't relate to it. PTSD, depression, anxiety is still PTSD, anxiety, and depression.
Trauma is trauma in different wrapping, essentially.
Right. You know, and there's nothing fair, and nor is there a point in comparing those traumas either. You know, just because I went through combat doesn't mean that your car accident was better or worse. It's still there's still an end product of being traumatized and going through all these things, and it's actually a thing that I had an issue with going through therapy because I went to Princeton Medical Center in behavioral health. Um, and I did what's called men's trauma. So it was actually just guys um, in trauma related therapy. We were in group therapy. And because there was that stigma of not being able to be fully vulnerable with women in the same area, it was a very interesting concept because it was like people from 18 to there was a guy that was in his 60s in my group, and it was being able to be more open and more vulnerable without kind of like not being exposed to what we would see as a stigma behind men's health, not being able to
Right.
be open and stuff like that. And I got to a point where like these guys weren't talking about, weren't being vulnerable because they thought what I went through was so much worse. And they would even say it's just like, but I have nothing to complain about, like being genuine, and kind of invalidating themselves, when I would talk about my experiences. So it was just like I had to tell them, I was just like, what I went through and how I was able to deal with it and cope with it and get through it. It's not going to be the same journey for you. It's going to affect us differently. Our upbringing, down to what we eat, is going to affect how we respond to things.
And that was something that I struggled with in the beginning a lot, is like I never even gave my chance to really realize that I had suffered any type of trauma in my life, because I always used to I also used to always grow up hearing, or I guess what really always stuck in my mind the most was like, be grateful for what you have, be grateful for what you have. So I also, especially in our teenage years, was very, very good at getting very, very close to people who I wanted to help. So like I would always say like,
Yeah.
look at this person, I don't have a reason to say anything. Look at this person, I don't have a reason to say anything. So I spend so much time distracted. I still do that. Let's be totally
Yeah,
honest.
let's be real here. I think, yeah.
Maria's like rolling her eyes at me. I still like deflect the fact that I need to help myself by trying to help other people and like helping them with their stuff. But through like what you were saying, through doing that, we tend to invalidate our own experiences, because we say, I should be this, I should be that, I should be this, but it's that very, very complicated tightrope walk to keep the balance of saying, like, these are the things that I can be grateful that I have in my life, but like, this is the stuff that sucks. And like, this is the stuff that it's okay to suck. And I have to be able to look at all of that in a 360 to have appreciation for the good stuff, but be able to really look at the sucky stuff for what it is, and then actually be able to deal with it. And you're right. Like we can't compare our baggage to each other's baggage. Like it just doesn't work that way. But what we can do is empathize with one another about having, because like we all release the same chemicals in our brains, right? Like we all feel the same emotions. So like we can empathize and sympathize and relate and connect based on those things that we're feeling. It doesn't matter the what causes it or like the why it causes it is the fact that we get that same end result.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes us human. So like we have the ability to connect on it, but like our own sense of ego gets really good at getting in the way of that.
Right. And you look at like, and it can be anything from age to your culture and stuff like that. There's that, you want that support system, your family, especially. Like that was my hardest thing, was like, so like, I know that but I don't think Maria knows, I lost a sister when, my family lost a sister. It's something that we've kind of just had to deal with as a family. I was really young, she was very young, and my household was PTSD. I grew up in that, with a bunch of people that didn't really handle it. They kind of just put it to the side. Yeah, this sucks, but we don't have time. We have 4 other kids, so like we kind of have to go into it, and like everything that I had gone through afterwards, from abuse from another family member to going through an episode that I didn't realize I was having an episode because I didn't know what was going on, and then joining the army and going through all that stuff. I didn't recognize any of that either. I thought it was normal to feel like crap about myself in a sense, and to like, constantly look at my problems. Well, someone has it worse. Someone has it worse. There's always going to be someone in the world that has it worse. And it's not even fair to say it that way. It's, you know, we're all in different circumstances, and some people that come from really bad places ended up making it really far and having these kind of against the odd mentality. I had a psychology professor, and I had done, ASL, American Sign Language course, the semester before this, and I had a psychology teacher who was completely deaf. Never heard a single word in his life. He was a professor at Rutgers actually for 30 years. And he was teaching a class at Middlesex. I took a night class, on the Middlesex campus, in New Brunswick. So, and he was just this such upbeat guy. His biggest thing about psychology was motivation. He had actually learned how to talk by holding. His mother had taught him to hold on to, someone's throat and hear the vibrations,
Oh,
paper in front of his face to pronunciate and all this stuff. And he even sang a Billy Joel song.
Oh.
But he had never heard a single word in his life. He didn't even know sign language. I knew more sign language than he did. Um, so like he had this mentality, and he even was saying, he's like, you're kind of forced to face these odds. And even if it's not something that is sudden that comes into your life, you have these odds against you in a sense. And having, and I felt like this for a long time. I was like, man, I wish my life was shittier so that I can, make it further, and that I had something to push me when my life was kind of shitty, when looking back at it and stuff like that at the time. So like having those odds sometimes is in your favor.
Yeah, it's just a matter of what you. That's why your mindset is so important. There's a lot of shit in life you don't get to decide, right?
Right.
But you do get to decide how you're gonna face the shit, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to decide if the shit's gonna overwhelm you or if you're gonna climb and rise above it.
Right.
And that's why I love what you do with Good Morning Feels, and I love that it's a lot of your own personal experience with it, because if you wake up in a bad mood, like you already lost that game. You know what I mean?
And if
Or
you
if
didn't go to
take the bad
sleep,
mood
you're
that you
screwed.
woke up with and you bring it into the day, then you've lost.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So being able to, and you have a slightly different way that you like go through all of it, but I had to figure out what my like morning routine was going to be, because I have those days too. Like we don't live in a society that is very forgiving and like telling us, yeah, you should be so excited about waking up every day. You know what I mean? Like we get a lot more shit thrown at us than flowers and like than anything else.
Yep.
So it's like you have to find the gold in that shit stack. I'm making a lot of shit analogies today, guys. But yeah, we're not necessarily taught how to do it. So I love that. And that's, I think, a common theme that we talk about on this show too, is like, we're not taught the skills of what it really means to live the life you want to live or live a happy or fulfilled life. And we have to figure
Or
it
even
out
how to
out.
deal with bad days.
Yeah.
Even
Or
like what
how to acknowledge or say it's okay that.
Yeah, because like what Dan said before, like some days just getting out of bed is an accomplishment, right? Like
Yeah.
I had one of those days yesterday. I was in bed till 2:30 in the afternoon, and like that's extremely late. Like even though I sleep like at my regular sleep pattern is like 3 to 9, so like imagine like 2:30, like, and like I told myself, I was like, by the time I got up, I was like, that's fine. Like look at me getting out of bed. Like, and like I think we should as a society, especially in the tri-state area, like that's fine, because the way that we move and like how capitalism like trains us as machines is absolutely, like, it takes a toll. And that's why Dan, like it's good that you found that is a trigger and that you moved down to North Carolina, because like if you stayed up here with your wife, I'm sure that this would have been 10 times worse for your mental health.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big things that like what we're talking about is like we're not taught that. And when you come from so many different backgrounds, when you don't come from an area where you have a lot of different people, you don't bother to even think about that kind of stuff, because everyone's the same. This is what it's like. This is how it is. Where it's like you meet so many people from our area, and it's like, all right, this isn't what this isn't a set way of doing things. And like one of the bigger things that I am trying to do later on, is we want to create like a community as far as, I guess it's more of a transition program, because like we, with veterans and with people going into just their next stage of life, whether it's moving, whether it's whatever it is, getting out of college and going, or high school and going to this real world, and everything like that, we want to create kind of an environment. It doesn't have to be temporary, but more of like, we kind of want to give that security of building like a tiny home, not tiny, but like we were looking at like cargo homes, like
Everyone were telling me about this original idea.
Yeah. So like I think that's one of the bigger things with being able to kind of focus in on these skills is have this environment that we're talking about. And like basically we want to have this community. We want to start it off with vets. Kind of like these are affordable. You know, we can build these, they're not going to be expensive. We have the land, you know, they can rent these out, they can come to our community for a period of time, recalibrate, and kind of go back out into the world, learn these skills like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy. Those are things that I use personally on a regular basis to and that I learned in therapy to kind of work through all of that stuff. And I think it should be taught in schools to begin with, in high school, because
There's a lot of other stuff that we need, like econ and like all of like we should learn about that way later. Like, we don't need
yeah,
any of that stuff at the start. You need to learn how to be a human first.
right,
But it's like you're saying the ability to. It is the hardest transition is realizing we always used to say like we have a family you choose. There's a family you're born into and there's a family you choose. And like the bigger part of that is like people having to separate themselves. And a lot of people, you know, like the town that we lived in is very much rooted in like ancestral, like traditional, like the
Yeah.
older ways of thinking. That was just the reality of it.
Mhm.
And if people don't have the awareness to notice that they have to even just look at that differently, let alone not even change anything, but actually look at it and actually assess it as to whether it is good or bad for them, let alone the rest of the world around them, it becomes a really just having to do that personally, like was something that shook all of my roots because I started to realize, you know, I have to be different. I'm not okay with what these certain things about where I came from and like my lineage and that stuff. So I have to change it, and it's not an easy thing to do. And I think the thought of the community that you're trying to develop gives people the chance to realize they can do it in a safer space, because trying to live your life and sort your shit out and then also going through all of that is like bombs in your face. You know what I mean? Like it's just constant, like talk about triggers, like it's constant triggers. And like while you're dealing with it, to be constantly triggered and not know how to handle it is extremely overwhelming. And I honestly, it was so funny because I like everybody in life, like I've known Dan in phases of life, right? Like we were super close in high school, and then like he started going into the army, and I had a really hard time with him going into the army, so like I had to pull myself away. And like then like it was so interesting because you were always like as much as I loved when you came home and I got to see you, you were always the happiest when you weren't home. Like
yeah,
shit hit the fan every time that you came home. So I would be like, oh, like in the back of my mind, I'd be like, okay, maybe he just needs. But how do you say that? So like I just kind of like, well, you have to just let it happen. But it was realizations that you needed to go through. You know what I mean? Like things like we talked about this last week in our episode with Jada. Like it's not until you don't step away, you don't realize where you came from.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
right.
until you move past what you're like dealing with in the moment where you can actually look back and start to make those assessments. But I'm very happy that you did what you did and that you moved. Not that my opinion matters at all, but I just know that you're happier, and I think that it gives you the chance to really take care of yourself and be yourself and do what you want to do and not have to worry about all the stupid shit.
Yeah, I mean, you were spot on though. Like the happiest I ever was when I wasn't home. As crappy as that was, because I was still close with so many people. You know, but as I spent more time outside of there, I realized a lot of things. Like I met even like I had true friends back home, and then I met these true friends outside of that environment, and I just noticed all of these people that were just white noise. You know, people that were more acquaintances than anything, people that were using me for this or wanting to use me for that, and all of these different things, and that, you know, even being a veteran and having the hype and spotlight on you, all those people disappear when it's gone. You know, when the hard shit hits, when the real stuff starts to happen, when you need to be vulnerable, there's people that aren't going to be able to be there for you to do that, and that are going to make you feel bad for it, like having suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. The last thing you want to do is blame someone for having those, and I saw a lot of that.
Oh my, that's the last thing you ever want to hear when you're going
Right.
through all that.
Blame and shame and guilt are all not like those are that's how people end up where they end up and having to deal with stuff, right?
Right.
Those are the God damn it. Those are the emotions that end up in, and those are the relatable emotions, right? Regardless of what situation, like what variable situation you were in to make you feel those emotions are pretty much the Maria. So that's our next T-shirt is gonna say shame, guilt. I don't remember what else I said.
Okay.
Shame, guilt, and blame are going to be the next 3 things as to reasons why we stagger into dealing with emotional health. But that's the last thing you need.
Right. And like people want to acknowledge, like, if you could say that depression is an illness and then in the same sentence or in the same instance blame someone for, having these suicidal thoughts, it's like, what did you think the end result of this illness was?
Right. Right.
Like, where do you think that goes to? It doesn't just like, it's just not like depression. Like, that's it. There's
Like get over it.
It's the same thing that I say with injuries, right? Like it doesn't happen overnight.
right.
Most injuries are caused by something else and the constant buildup of what's going on inside your body. Same thing with illness. Like, and that's why mental health, we talk about mental health and we talk about illness. Like, it doesn't all of a sudden trigger, like, or unless it's a serious situation. But, like, it's something that's built up and built up and built up. And most of the time, it's the fact that, like, it's building up and we're not dealing with it. And that's when things start to really develop.
Right. That's actually, I honestly think that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the transition program is like, it's that buffer between, when they're getting out and going from this environment, like I was talking to you about, when it comes to being around other people that have PTSD and not really knowing the difference of what regular life is and what this is, and then going into this totally different environment where it's not really like that. It's almost like shocking. Like I felt totally and completely isolated from everyone else all the time because I couldn't relate whatsoever in that regard. And being in an environment and going from an environment where you're completely understood to one where you have to constantly explain yourself is just like, it's the most overwhelming, thing that I ever had to go through. I mean, it took a couple of years of me just, I didn't work for over a year. I kind of just like would be home for weeks at a time. I didn't do anything. Like, and I had friends passing away, and I was going through all of these episodes and stuff like that, and like not being able to transition into the next part of it all. It was very, very, very difficult, and especially when you don't validate those things, you don't have anything to kind of work at. Like it's just
Maria and I relate because both of us have experienced like depression before. We relate it to the sunken place from Get Out. You ever seen that movie?
I don't.
You ever seen Get Out?
It's a recent. I don't know. It was a couple years ago.
It's this very like trippy concept of like this person gets hypnotized and like falls into like the depths of his mind where like he sees everything that's happening but like can't interact and has like no engagement and can't do anything about it. So like when Maria and I talk about depression, that's the like it feels like the sunken place in that movie. Like you're watching your life happen and you're like screaming and fighting from the inside, but like you feel like you can't do anything about it. And like not having action to take, like not knowing exactly what to do next is exactly how you fall into that because you feel like you can't overcome it.
Right. Right. Yeah. And like that in itself, and then you have people that don't recognize those things about themselves and don't realize that they're feeling the same exact way, and are used.
For the people not watching our YouTube and just listening to this podcast on Spotify, we're vigorously nodding our heads, me and Brittany, while Dan's explaining this. There's a lot of nodding in this episode.
Like, exactly. Like it's just, you're around a lot of people that aren't willing to accept their own truth. So trying to find yours is a constant struggle when it's just like, oh man, just, let's smoke a blunt, let's go get a drink, just forget about it. We'll go out, we'll do something, take your mind off of it, and it just becomes all of that. And when you're altering your perception of things, that's when I notice exactly what you're talking about. It's like I'm watching my life as a revolving door of the same exact thing, and I'm not able to do anything about it, and then I'm making myself sadder by avoiding these things. And it's just like seeing it and then almost seeing yourself in other people doing the same exact things, and you pass judgment on them for not wanting to deal with those things. But unless you're being mindful of that, just keep doing that. You keep projecting those things as like, look at this guy, like wasting his life. It's like, but it's a deflection of, well, I'm kind of wasting my life too.
These are and that's why Maria talks about her 3 things all the time, because those are the 3 things that push that shame, guilt, and blame onto us, right? And then it goes back to the fact that we're not taught the skills to how to even see it or even know what's going on. And it is a habit. It is a habit, but, and I talked about this too, like, it's a habit that you need to build so strong that it's just like an instinct almost. But it takes a really long time to build the habit. And not only do you have to build the habit to actually deal with it, you have to first learn you have to first unlearn all this shit. You have to first realize it's happening, which is hard as hell. Then you have to unlearn all the shit that you were doing before that were terrible habits that were making it worse on you. And then you have to learn the other shit, and then you got to keep it going for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's like, the commitment to a full-time job. It's like the commitment to a relationship, the things that you brought up earlier, but it's the real commitment to yourself. Like, that's the commitment to yourself and the self-care. That's what we're talking about with it. It's not the let me go, and not to say this isn't not to put this down or say this isn't like a good thing, but like, self-care isn't just about caring for your body and your outsides and the aesthetics.
That's what I was gonna say.
It's a lot more than that. And like, if you don't feel good on the inside, you could self-care the hell out of your outside, and you're still not going to feel that great a couple of days later. And like, that's why people, like you brought up, that's why people get addicted, like addictions to things, and that's why they develop addictive personalities, right? You get so addicted to being able to escape, being able to this makes me feel good for 10 seconds, but all the root of the shit is killing that feel good feeling, so now I have to keep going back and going back and going back. And it's like, that's the stuff that we talk about, that the top of the flower. Like, we have to talk about the roots more and more and more and more. So I love that everything that you're doing. I'm so happy that you're happy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm so happy that you're happy.
I will say, I heard a quote the other month. You can't heal where your trauma is. So I'm glad, Dan, and I wasn't friends with you during that whole time span, but I'm glad that you recognize that New Jersey isn't, again, it was the place of your trauma. Even when Brittany said that you would come home from being deployed, like that, you were sadder at home, and like that kind of sucks, especially if you're very close to your family, because you don't want that to happen, right? Because like, it's in the back of your mind, you still want to stay because of your family and like your friends or whatever. But even so, like, you kind of have to do what you got to do and move out, even if that does suck. So I'm glad that you did get out.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That honestly, like, that was the hardest part of it all, because especially with the position I was in, I came back, from deployment, something no one ever experienced. I had medals and all these stories and all this kind of stuff, and it was the top of the flower, like what we're, talking about. And like, I started to realize really quick, like, that image and what I was trying to put up and all this kind of stuff, it was for the attention, and all of these things. And it was just like, I don't know, I started to realize, like what I was saying before, like, all of these people really weren't there for me. They were there for that top.
Back to like all of our conversations that we used to have about this. It's hard realizations to have. It's really hard realization, and like, we all go through our own versions of these, but it's really hard to realize that people like you for who they think you are, or who they want you to be, like the expectations, and not who you really are.
And like, when they find out who you really are, they're just like, but can you go back to the person that I want you to be? Like, that's just so selfish. It's just so selfish and so demeaning to your, like, as a person, like, going through shit. Like, it's just like, why? What is your purpose then for me?
And that's the thing. The thing that used to piss me off about it was because it would, going back to that invalidation thing, I'm seeing this the way that I saw this as being like your friend through this time, was like, it used to over all of the like that the pretty flower. Let's keep using this analogy because I'm all for analogies and imagery. But like, the pretty flower would end up getting stomped on and wouldn't even matter anymore. And then like, then you would start losing sight of like all of the things that you did achieve.
Right.
So over like there were so many and like like and that was when I was me, Maria, well, both of you know this, that I was never a person to back down from yelling at anybody.
From a fight?
Like,
Yeah,
that's
no.
the-
Back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, no.
Throwing
like,
hands.
those are the things that get so frustrating. But it's like you have to get to a point where it's like
You have to
it
get
was
to a
so
point
hard
where
sit
it's
there
not.
and have you go through those things, but it was like I wasn't gonna be able
Yeah.
to do anything for you. You know what I mean? And that was like what used to kill me. That's why I always wanted you to just tell me everything. Just tell me and tell me and tell me. And
But
tell
that's
me.
also the thing that you should stray away from. Like people don't owe you anything too. That's also.
Damn.
Oh, I call her out all the time. She calls me
yeah,
out all the
that's
time.
why-
This is a
that's
very
honestly why that's why
safe space.
we do this. Like this whole podcast is just talking about this stuff, and like we still have to call each other out for the shit that we still do that we know is the bad. We know each other's bad stuff that we're not supposed to be doing. So we
Yeah,
call
and
each
like
other out outright on this podcast.
and like we talk about this all the time. Like we both went to therapy too.
Yeah.
So it's like our experiences from the lessons that we learned in therapy. So it's like whatever tidbits that we can help each other, we kind of call each other out every week on them. So
Oh yeah.
so
Yep.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
we're all these things. Tell everybody how they can connect with you and all the good stuff to look out for that you're doing.
Okay. So you can find me at Good Morning Feels on Instagram or just Daniel Estrada. Very simple, very straightforward. You know, something to look out for, which I'm gonna start doing regularly, and what I'm trying to do to make it a little bit more personal is to do videos, short clips, kind of just my affirmation for the day. In the morning, trying to get myself to see myself saying it, and not just saying it. Maybe more of a personal connection, because like I can pick a quote from Pinterest and post about it and write whatever I want under it, and kind of like have it there and stuff like that. But it becomes not about you as much anymore once you get to a position that you can help. Like I'm still all about myself, but me helping other people actually helps me too. In a big way. That kind of like when I don't have enough to look at for myself at first, I look at what kind of example I'm setting for other people that are like me. Um, my struggles in talking about them, the biggest things that I've had happen that makes me keep talking about this stuff and wanting to post about it is that one out of 800 something people that follow me saying, I needed this today. I really appreciate you being vulnerable from all walks of life. People I've never met, people I deployed with, people I went to high school with. Like I just every so once in a while I'll get that message and just be like, hey, that's awesome. Thank you so much for saying this. This is really important. This is what people aren't talking about, whatever it is. And like, I'm very open to that. I'm very open to being messaged on Instagram. I don't find it weird at all. If people are always just like, I'm sorry if you find this weird or whatever, but, I know we haven't talked in a long time or you don't know me. I'm just like, we don't all really know each other down to the nitty gritty. You're, even in relationships, you're constantly learning things about each other.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's
So-
awesome. Go follow Good Morning Feels if you do not for some hashtag Good Morning Feels. Maria
job,
hates when
Brittany.
I'm corny, so I had to throw that in there to just get her to have some feelings about it. All right, well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so nice to get to talk to you. It has been like a solid year since I've had like a full-on conversation with you. So, this is like COVID. That's like everything, but I'm so happy that you're happy. Please give Michelle a super big hug for me.
I will. She says hello. We're still in our morning get up, so she was just like, just tell them I said hello.
Oh. Give her.
So, but thank you guys so much for having me. It was awesome doing this. I was like weirdly nervous. I'm like, I haven't talked to them in so long. It's been so weird. Like just because it's like I've never done a podcast either before, so it's just like this whole experience, which is awesome. I would love to do it again.
Oh, you're welcome anytime.
I would just give me the day or two heads up and I'm on it. Yeah, since we kind of got past this is who I am, this is what I've been through a little bit, we can definitely go into depth with a lot more stuff next time. I would love to.
Yes, and we have so many people that have joined us before on the community that we've been building through this, which has been like I think what Maria and I are super the most excited about. There are so many people that we want you guys to be able to connect because everybody we bring on this show, for anybody who's not a listener beforehand, everybody we bring on this show, regardless of what our initial conversations are about, like because Maria and I always talk about these things, we end up talking about like mental health. We end up talking about personal struggle. We talk about personal development. Like these are just things that we talk about because we think it's important. Like to be able to be a part of a community with people that are all so super different and like couldn't be any more different and bringing us all together, those are conversations we want to be able to have and share with people. So we would love to be able to have you join when we get those started.
Yeah, absolutely. I am open to it. I'm always free on Sundays, so I have nothing else to do. I would love to do this with you guys.
Because you work hard enough 12-hour shifts, so enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we will talk to you very soon.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you guys
Thanks,
for listening.
Dan.
We'll check you on the next. Oh, this is the final episode of 2020, Maria.
Oh yes. Happy holidays, everyone,
happy
and
holidays,
also happy
New Year, all that
New Year.
stuff.
Dan, of course, thank you again.
Thank you so much. Going into the new year strong. Hopefully 2021 better.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That sounds great. All right. Bye, guys. We'll talk to you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.